Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to our class. Today's lesson is going to be a lecture, and I'll try to show some graphs if I have them available. I'll be reading from my notes and trying to make sense of them while I'm dictating the lecture. Today's lecture will be on the digital transfer from paper to digital, um, specs on uh, almost everything that's anime related, meaning that all the software that they use, all the page sizes, all the equipment. I tried to condense it. I have a few pages of notes here, um, so I'm going to try to make this quick, and I'll be reading a lot from my notes. So just try to bear with me. And all this information is coming from Aja, which is the Japanese Video Association, I think it might be called. I don't really know the acronym. I'll try to post it if I find it before I post this video. So, uh, this is coming from a survey that was issued in Japan um, to the anime industry. So, starting in 2006, the digital production survey in Japan began. In 2012, high def was standard, and it was the third year of the survey. Um, in 2015, there will be a fourth survey and talk. I guess it would be at Anime Japan, which is a convention that they have over there for fans of Japanese anime, as well as business um, conventions and lectures, I guess, they have over there. So the talk will be on 4K and HK, which is the size. Basically, if you have, let's say, high definition, that would be considered like, I don't know, less than half a K. So you multiply that and you'll get 4K. It's basically the size of the screen and how big the image is shown. So by 2020, uh, they're suspected that 4K and HK will be the production standard. So that means everyone's going to have to basically start outputting bigger images when they're uh, doing anime. So I'll try to show a graph of that if I can find one that can make better sense. So this questionnaire was sent to uh, all the Japanese anime companies that are out there. So Japan Video Association Inc. was the ones who issued the email questionnaire. There was 41 companies that were responded in this questionnaire. The Japanese working group also held an interior survey, a study group more or less, um, and that took place between November 5th and December 13th of 2013. The questions on software versions, type of equipment, data, transport media, etc., art, photography, editing, ease of transition between uh, paper to digital, and the survey was conducted online, so it was an email survey. But they also had an in-house focus group or study group, whatever you want to call it. So 2D cell animation and background painted images with a focus with some CG questions were also asked, as well as a work process and research of going digital. So one of the questions was, do you use a drawing screen? The majority said they don't, but are researching and training for near future use. A drawing screen, I'm basically talking about like a Cintiq or basically a Cintiq because it's a Japanese. They have a Japanese part of Wacom that makes a Cintiq. A Cintiq is basically a screen that you draw on. It's a drawing tablet more or less. They have a bunch of different versions from small ones to ones that are over 24 inches or that are 24 inches, and I'm sure they're making even bigger ones by this time. The adaptation of drawing tablets number was I guess a low response. Um, Other reasons of use of tablets was for coloring, cell correction, retake work, shadow markup, character design, cleanup work, scanning of backgrounds, correcting backgrounds, artboards, 3D, flash, trace. Basically, instead of using a Cintiq to animate on, they were using it to color, to check cells, to I guess draw retake work, doing shadow markup, character designing, scanning of backgrounds and correcting them, probably in Redis, Traceman, artboards, which I'm assuming are they were just creating their animation bible and just basically using it to lump all the pictures into one folder. Basically, using it as just another monitor, not so much drawing on it in particular for animation. 3D, I guess they're using it to either model characters or to 3D animation, and Flash tracing, which is basically like a cleanup in Flash. So the follow-up question was, um, do you use normal tablets, meaning like a Wacom and Intios, I think it's called, which are just a tablet, a drawing tablet, and you basically just use a stylus for it instead of writing on your screen. You're writing on the tablet itself. There was a huge response for regular drawing tablets or Intios tablets. Um, the normal drawing tablets, I guess I'll call them, are still um, being used because they're such a low cost. Compared to a Cintiq that can run you a couple of grand, an Intios runs you less than a grand, I guess, depending on the size that you use, and you can use it full screen if you want to. You might have to do research on that for your own. I don't have one to show you, but it's it's a bit different when you're drawing on a regular tablet compared to a Cintiq. I loved Cintiqs. I think they're the best thing that was made um, for digital art or just art in general. So that's just my opinion, but that's it's most like paper that I can find. Also, iPads were used, uh, not so much Android or Windows tablets. And the reason that they use regular tablets is because of the low cost, and it's easier to, purchase a bunch of tablets compared to a bunch of Cintiqs. And the tablets are much more portable, so it's a low cost, effective uh, peripheral to use when you're doing anime. And since people are still learning over in Japan how to transfer over from paper, I guess it's a great, you know, it's a great introduction and not much of a cost to the production. Another question was degree of acceptance of digital animation. It was a 3 out of 5 response. Uh, the rating was neutral, so it wasn't either good nor bad. It was just another tool for doing anime. One of the quotes was, "It's the person and not the computer." So basically, the art is still there. It depends on the artist and not so much the tools, which I would totally agree with. Um, you have to know animation. You have to know the production if you want to be great at it. And it doesn't matter how you're doing it as long as you get it done. So it's just a tool doing digital compared to doing paper, but they all are great, I think, in my own opinion. Since it's fairly new to the anime industry, it's still, people are still trying to learn how to do it, do it well. Another question that was surveyed was the pros and cons of doing digital. So pros were that you can do remote meetings, I guess, with like Skype or InMeet or Hangout. Um, you could show people things faster, and you could work online with each other instead of having to travel to a meeting and being wasting so much time just traveling. You can just be online, and you can do your work and get ideas to each other faster. No paper. Uh, the video formats are sometimes large, but you can compress videos, so that's a plus, I guess. When you're editing, you could have proxies, so you have a smaller transcoded version of the original, so you can transfer those online easily to each other if you need to, for viewing or for editing, like offline editing. Easy storage, meaning you could just dump it onto a hard drive or stick it in a cloud, um, and there's nothing physical that you need to handle. Um, one of the comments was that paper is still more human looking. I guess the pencil line, and you can uh, it looks more like a human did it if you do it on paper. It's kind of an old school way of thinking, but it's unfortunate that paper is dying slowly, even in Japan. It's not cost efficient, and if you saw my video on the anime committee, I explained that there's a committee that will, that does um, give the go of like what anime is being made in Japan right now, and they're also concerned about foreign foreign companies doing anime style, especially in India, France, and the U.S. I guess it's not like they're not threatened by outside productions, but the look and I don't know, I guess the feel is getting adapted and becoming other countries part of their matrix. So they're concerned about that. That anime is not just coming from Japan anymore, and they're also concerned about Taiwan. I guess they're up and coming in the anime industry. Uh, so being that paper is being phased out, lots of jobs are being lost because I guess those animators or layout people or whomever in the production line, they haven't transferred over, and they haven't uh, gone from analog to digital, so that's their jobs are basically getting lost, and I guess certain jobs are also getting phased out. Um, Shooting on film, uh, doing stuff like that, it's getting phased out. Um, Drawing digital takes practice and time, which is very true. If you've been drawing on paper for a really long time and you transfer over to digital, you should it should still feel the same, but there's something missing, flipping paper as opposed to flipping between two different drawings. I guess it takes time getting used to. So now you're using your left hand as well as your right hand to, you're drawing with your right hand or your left, depending on if you're left-handed or right-handed. So you're drawing with one hand and you're on your keyboard with the other, doing shortcuts or flipping between images. So it takes lots of practice, especially to do it proficiently and do it fast. Um, so the pros and cons, I guess it was a neutral response. It was neither good nor bad, but there's it's definitely the future of anime, and they just have to adapt to it. And this every company eventually will go digital in the near future. And there's also no need for a quick action recorder, the QAR, which in the past you would take all your cells and you would basically do a pencil test on what they call a quick action recorder. But since everything's digital, all you have to do is just press play within whatever program you're using, and that's your quick action recorder. You don't need to wait to scan or shoot everything. So that's a pro. Um, A4 size tablets are the most used. Uh, I guess those are ENEOS, followed by the A5 and A6. LCD tablets are low in use, but the ones that are in use, the majority is a 13-inch. I guess those are 13-inch Cintiqs, and they use more than a 22-inch Cintiqs. The cons of going digital. One of the cons of going digital is the anxiety of data loss. I guess, hard drives crash and, things get stolen. Files get corrupted depending how, what type of system you're using. Someone could press delete and just, erase everything if it's not secured, which I would hope they have some sort of security in line. That's the anxiety is a lot. Um, it's coming a lot from animators, I guess, since they're transferring over from the paper, they're still concerned about their work being lost. Since paper and pencil are being phased out, a lot of animators' concerns are the loss of traditional fundamentals that are being lost by noobs. I'm assuming that since like cutout animation and like puppet animation has become a thing, the fundamentals being lost, I guess, are how to animate traditionally, frame to frame or frame by frame. And I guess schools out there, I'm just speculating. Uh, Schools in Japan are probably teaching, shortcut ways like cutout animation and puppet animation compared to frame by frame. I'm just speculating. I'm sure I'm wrong, but that's a big concern from animators. That's a con of going digital. Older talent is being left behind and or fired, I guess, since they aren't transferring over to digital and they're still stuck on paper. There's no real need for a lot of them, especially if companies are digital. So the older people are getting pushed out, and all these younger people are getting pulled in who are digital, I guess, savvy, or they just that's what they know. It's um, so there's no real advantages. Well, there's no real advances in traditional animation that are being developed. So the paper art is dying. So there's, I guess, nothing new being learned, and this is according to the animators in Japan. Um, there's nothing being developed, since everything was done on paper and you had to figure things out on paper. I guess they're concerned about just the development of traditional animation being lost, which it can be done on digital. You can do traditional animation on digital. I've been doing it for up 2 3 years now. Um, so that's a concern of the animators in Japan. So there's no new development being done in traditional animation. Backgrounds are still painted on paper. 12 out of 15 companies responded to this question, and so backgrounds are still being done on paper, like opaque paint and acrylic paint, watercolor. Besides backgrounds being painted, there's also CG backgrounds, 3D CG, that are being created, and backgrounds are being scanned into computers, and digital backgrounds are the last response within. I'm sorry, my bowler just kicked on. Digital painted backgrounds are the last in line of like how backgrounds are being created. So it's the first way it's being created, and the majority of way is still on paper. After that, it's CG. After that, it's scanned backgrounds. I'm assuming that's like scanned designs or layouts of backgrounds, and then being digitally colored. And the last is digital backgrounds, meaning like a Photoshop background. Okay, so getting into the software that they're using right now, Photoshop CS6 is being most used if you're doing backgrounds. After that, it's CS5 and CS 5.5, CS4, CS2, Photoshop CC, and last is CS3, which I don't know. That's just the way that they're doing it right now in Japan. 3D Max is used for a lot of CG backgrounds. After that, Maya and very little companies are using Lightwave or Google SketchUp. Other hand painted background apps that are being used is Flash, Clip Studio, Paint Pro /EX, and Painter. We don't really have Clip Studio Paint right now. I think they just might have released a version of Clip Studio Paint in the States, but it's not like a huge thing over here right now, to my knowledge. Background resolutions. I'm assuming this is scanning and painted backgrounds. So the DPI that they're using right now is 140, and after that it's 200. After that it's 150, and after that it's 300. So it's 75% of full D, of HD scans. So instead of it being 1920 by 1080p, it's 1440 by 810. So that's the width times height. So it's 1440 in width and 810 in height. So they're scanning it at 45% of the HD size. The paper that they're using is a A4 layout, and they're scanning their layouts at 200 DPI for full HD, which is 1920 by 1080. So if they're doing, let's say, a 720p delivery of a show, they're scanning it at 1440 by 810. If they're doing a full HD, they're scanning it at 1920 by 1080 at a DPI of 200. Some companies are going 2K right now, so it's more than 2 times better the resolution than HD, and those pixels are 2048 by 52. So that's an approximate size of a 2K size video. 300 DPI is too high for HD, so it's a bunch of wasted information and it's a huge file size, so they don't scan their images at 300. 300 is usually done for prints, but if you're going to do HD, you're doing at 1920 by 1080 or less, which is 1440 by 810. And if you don't understand this, I'm sorry, you just might need to learn a little bit more about DPIs, dot per inches, and size resolution, image resolution, like HD, standard def, 2K, 4K, etc., etc. Moving on, cell animation. So the painted cells that are being digitized or being drawn digitally in animation, most companies are using a program called Redis Paintman HD, which is by this company called Celsius. They're a Japanese company. Um, it was an overwhelming response to the question of what program you're using to paint animated cells. Older versions are used and new versions are being adapted as well. So the reason that they use old versions is so all the other companies that they work with are on the same page. So if, let's say, I update my software but you haven't, I can't send you files. My files won't open in your software. Even though that Redis does have a backwards compatibility, they aren't 100%. So they they keep using the old software, and as you know, 2 or 3 versions go by, then they start updating not to like the newest version, but maybe the version after it or whatnot. So they're still using old Paintman products in Japan. So the list of the software that's being used to paint animated cells are in this order. It's number 1 is Redis Paintman. Number 2 is Photoshop, which is used less than 1/4 of the time. Flash, which is about 5%. Animo Ink and Paint, about 2%. Illustudio and Clip Studio Paint Pro are lower or just not even being used.